Tube flies is I like to give myself kind of a thread base about the same length of the shank that I want to work with. So that way I know how much space I have left to play so I don't misjudge my materials and spacing. So I'm going to say that's probably about the same length as those size 6 up eye hooks, any of those gamakatsus or Arexes. I like the little bit smaller one for these trout bugs. And again, on these tube fly systems, you can tie these flies as long as you want. There's kind of an infinite, you know, play there where you can make them as long and as short as you need. So some of those guys are, you know, a little bit more universal, a little more versatile, but not as sturdy. So the first material I'm going to add to this is going to be some pheasant tail tippets. This is going to be my tailing fibers. I'm going to pull probably about 10 or 12 so fibers off of there and strip those guys back. And then I'm going to tie these guys in right at that bar. So tie those guys down. And with these tube flies, you kind of get you get a much larger shank, much wider diameter, so your materials, you can either really clump them up on top or you can really spread them and veil them around. So with like your different stuff, you can kind of play around and figure out what you like to do or what the way you like to see those flies. But with the tail fibers, I like to keep them a little stacked so that way they stay a little bit more clumped on top. And then we're going to go ahead and trim these little butt sections down. I'm going to work our thread about 3/4 of the way up, and we're going to tie in some silver wire in medium. Break this off of the spool. And then we're going to tie this on my facing side of the shank. We're just going to do touch and wraps, try and keep it as straight and as smooth as possible. With these tube flies, I said, you got that little bit bigger shank, so everything kind of stands out a little bit more. Next material for our body, we're going to add some opal tinsel. And we're going to apply that right next to the wire. And then we're going to work that thread again with touching wraps, trying to keep everything as smooth as possible. Back forward to about that 3/4 mark. Now I'm going to take my tinsel and I'm actually going to wrap this guy reverse, so that way when I wrap my wire forward, I'll have that counter wrap, and so that'll allow for some durability. And get that worked all the way forward. Tie that tinsel off. And then I'm going to take that wire and do some spacing wraps going forward. And while I'm doing this, I'm just holding that vise just to keep things steady and twisting on me. And we'll tie off that wire. I like to do 3 or 4 wraps over it, 2 or 3 wraps in front, and then I like to hold my thread up and I'll fold my wire back and forth and I'll do a few helicopter wraps. Makes for a nice clean cutoff point. And kind of build a little ramp there with that thread. So our next material we're going to add on this little guy is going to be a wing. So we're going to apply some mallard dyed in wood duck. Any of the kind of, a little bit smaller wings, to kind of measure that out. You can hold it upside down, and like about there is where the tips are going to end. So that's about where I'm going to start peeling and prepping that feather. I'm going to pull off all the little junk and excess there. And so now I'm going to take that, I'm going to kind of place it right on the top, and I'm going to kind of pinch and fold and roll that feather into one another, so that way when it binds down, it gives kind of a nice cone shape. If it's laying a little flat like that, you can always take a few wraps behind and kind of prop that wing up a little bit more. And get that laid down. And then you can also take kind of a hard edge of your scissors and rub that along that shank, that stem of that feather, help prop that wing up a little bit. We'll trim off that little stem. Next material we're going to do, we're going to collar with some hen saddle and a nice ginger variant. I'm going to prep that feather, and then we're going to tie this one in by the tip. Splay those fibers back, get a nice clean tie-in point, and we're going to tie that in right on the top. Trim off the little tip, and then we're going to move that thread forward just a few wraps. Then we're going to preen that feather. We're going to make just a few wraps here along the collar. And then I'm going to tie this off right on the top, right about that same position where we tied it in. We'll do a couple securing wraps over those fibers, and then we're going to collar another feather. We're going to collar a guinea feather here. This is just a natural guinea. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to prep one side. I don't want it to be too dense, so I'm going to strip and peel the fibers off of the left side of that feather as it's facing me. And then again, we're going to do the same prepping. Fold those fibers back, have a nice tight, clean tie-in point. Take off that stem. And this one we're just going to do, same, probably about just 2 wraps. Tie that guy off. And at this point, we'll be able to finish that fly with some whip finishes. And then this one, this one I don't necessarily want to add any weight to it. Hey Brig, you mind grabbing me the any of that solar res and the light right there? bone dry or yeah. Sweet, thanks. All right, so to finish this fly, we'll just build a little head of resin here. Let that guy cure. And then once you get these guys done, what I like to do is I like to slide my fly out, and I'll actually trim the tube fly. Got it on there a little tight. There we go. Slide that guy out. And then what I like to do is I like to just take a razor blade and just lightly trim that guy right in front of your head. And then on tube flies, you want to give yourself a little bit of room and space in the back on the trim, because you want to be able to add a soft tube over top of this, and that allows you to change the distance of your fly or hook from your fly. It allows you to help orientate the keel of these guys. So there's the wood duck trout spey. And then if you want to clean things up a little bit too, you can also put, you can round off the tube a little bit by putting a little bit of light or a little bit of fire on there. Help clean things up. Make a nice clean little taper with that solar res. And so you can do lots of different things on these platforms. I'm going to tie up another bug and get some other materials prepped for a second. So if you guys hold back and for just a few, I'll get the dirty bird trout spey going. So set that guy aside. Okay, cool.
So where would you fish it? How would you fish it?
So these guys, I'll swing these Henry's Fork, South Fork, Main Snake, even on the Salmon River. I like swinging them. Definitely, the kind of a little bit more of the traditional style with like the tube fly and the up eye or the intruder. But it's a good replacement or versatile system for that. What up, Brig? We're just getting more tripods set up here for, I think, yeah. We're just getting more cameras set up for the live stuff, so bear with us, guys.
I would just use them at 6 weeks, so I would go right. Yeah.
I think it is. I just don't think I'm I just don't think I'm tuned into switching it. That's just switching on the live.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it'll be good to see.
I mean, Madison's been kind of, I don't know about switching him and kind of just watching it, but I'm also too, like you said, this is all guinea pig stuff. Wait till we have to try and explain this to, you know, it's just a different world. Yeah, just a different world. Live is a.
No, I just use such a short little. I use.
Ready to rock and roll? All right. We got things fixed around so the camera won't be as shaky, guys.
All right, we're ready to start the next fly.
All right, so this next bug I'm going to tie is going to be called the Dirty Bird. One of the more recent videos we just posted. So familiar pattern, but the like you said, I want to tie this on a tube fly. So I'm going to start with some 140 rusty brown thread, something to keep nice tension. You can do the 210 if you like. I like doing the 140, just fairly simple. And so same kind of idea. We're going to get started here. We're going to get the kind of the basic hook shank length kind of dialed in with our thread. I'm going to flatten this stuff out, make nice smooth wraps. So first material we're going to lash onto this guy is going to be some streamer straggle jumbo. We're not going to do a lot of this, just a little, just barely, 2 wraps, something just to add a little flash in the tail there. So tie that guy in just by the tiniest little bit. And like I said, we're just going to do 2 wraps here just for kind of a base. Kind of just a little flare, a little flashy tail. Nice bright fluorescent material. Very, very visible, kind of similar to your hot spot. And then as we build up this body, I'm going to use electric dubbing twister here. Make things a little quicker, a little faster, a little simpler. You don't have to do anything but press a button and it zips it shut. And so we're going to build this body out of some MFC's Dirty Bird. Super fun, flowy, a little bit of synthetic in there. Binds up so you can build nice, fun dubbing loops. So I'm going to take that guy, apply it in there. Spread that dubbing out. Yeah, Hal, streamers are messy. We don't get to do a little tight, like we don't have tweezers to pick out one hair. We got lots of hairs here. We're gonna use combs. So, but super fun to use the dubbing twister, really quick and easy.
I don't think Isaac Walton
blows that guy in there real quick, and like I said, we'll use that brush, knock and dust out a bunch of fibers here, and then do some preening and palmering as we wrap this guy forward. Dang technology.
Someone wants to know what your go-to Waffle House order is.
That is going to be the Texas bacon, egg, and cheese toaster with double hash browns. I want it double covered and double chunked. That's every time, no doubt. And if you're in Louisiana and at the Paradise, if you're at the Paradise Waffle House and you think you're ordering with some waffles, you might order a Paradise. So learned that one from my trip down there recently. So can't miss out on the Waffle House opportunities any time of day. All right, so get this guy wrapped up here.
Paradise is a dog, isn't it?
Oh, Paradise. Paradise hands. All right. So now we got nice body kind of built up here. Tie that dubbin loop off. Knock that loop loose. Kind of brush out some of that material again. Get it nice and clean looking.
Good luck with that.
All right, so next material we're going to throw on there is going to be some ostrich hurls. And this one's going to be a little bit more tube fly style, so instead of focusing kind of more on the wing, I'm going to apply these as a little bit more of a collar around there. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off 2 or 3 at a time. Oh, and we're going to apply those guys on each side. So I'm going to do, looks like 4 looks like a good number on that one. I'm going to do 3 soft wraps. And I'm just going to call those placing wraps. And then I'm going to rotate my vise 90 degrees. And I'm going to do 3 more soft wraps. And then I'm going to rotate my vise 90 degrees. I'm going to do 3 more soft wraps. And each time I'm adding about 3, hurls of ostrich there. And this is a lot of bulk, a lot of adding at one spot, but what I'm going to do is after I get all 4 sides covered, then I'm going to back off all of those thread wraps and then just secure all 4 sides at once. So that way it helps eliminate that bulk. And so I'm going to undo these guys. Kind of just zigzag your way through as you unwrap them. Make sure while you do this you keep a hold of them where they are on that tube, so that way they stay in place. And then once you get unwrapped, then you're going to wrap all of them down in one nice clean tie-in point, and then we'll go through and we'll trim all of the little butt sections back. And then our next material we're going to throw on here, we're going to collar some fluorescent mallard. I like this stuff, nice and bright, some cool little barring and texturing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to peel off one side of this so I don't like it too dense. And then we're going to go ahead and same thing, we're going to fold those fibers back. A nice clean tie-in point. And we'll do about 3 wraps. Up here for a nice little collar. tie off that stem. All right, and then I like to finish this one with a little bit of ice dub. I think this is just a root beer or brown. So what I like to do is we're going to take this and we're going to kind of stack and line up all of those fibers. And then we're going to kind of veil this thing around that tube, kind of make it as even as possible. We're going to do 4 or 5 little securing wraps, and then we're going to fold that all back. I'm going to do a little whip finish here at the end. Cut that thread off, do a little combing again, kind of loosen up that collar. A little bit more of a brighter, flashier swing bug I like to fish with. Got lots of flow with that ostrich and that dirty bird dubbing. And then so at this one is one that I like to add a little weight to it. So I'm going to use one of the little tungsten cones. I'm going to slide that guy over the thread there, make sure it fits. Looks good. And you can glue these down if you want. You can do that, but I've kind of just gone to just cutting the tube off and then just melting down that front end. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that tube real quick, and then I'll show you how I like to melt those front pieces without wrecking that cone. So I like to leave about a 1/16 of an inch in front of that tube, in front of that cone I mean. And then what I'll do is I'll put my mandrel back in there, and that what that does is that keeps the plastic from melting towards the inside, keeps it rolling onto the outside, so it creates a little dome that builds up and it doesn't let that cone slide off. So we'll warm that up, rotate it, warm that up. You can see how it kind of just builds that little dome there and just keeps that cone from popping off. So once that guy cools down, slide that back out, and then again we'll trim down the tube on the back, so that way we can apply one of the soft tubes. And then I'll show you what I mean by the soft tube. So on the back end here, to help keep hooks fixed or to help keep that fly fixed in your tube kits, they will send you all the little hard tubes that come in the plastic. Then they'll send you some soft tubes.
Did you get your tubes at Waffle House too?
Nope. Those we get here. And so for the tubes, you can cut them and trim them as long as you like. But the best function for them is that you can dictate how far and how close you want your hooks to be. And then you can also swap out if you wanted to do if you wanted to fish with barbless hooks or required to fish with barbless hooks, but you have a very specific fly that you like to fish, you can interchange those out. You can kind of comply with the different rules and regulations on that. So that's kind of the versatility of a tube fly. It's not there's no any more advantage or less. It just allows you to fish the same fly with multiple hook positions or hook styles. So that's kind of the interest behind, you know, two plies and swinging. I'd say they're definitely more geared towards your swing stuff. So, but that's kind of the general setup for one of the little two plies I like to fish. So, all right, next I'm gonna get set up. I'm gonna start tying the pine cone mouse. So it's gonna take me another minute to move some materials around and get ready for that. So if you guys want, we got coffee, tea, hot water back over there. So if you want any sort of snacks and beverages, and then we will. I'll be right back with the flies. So yeah, pass those guys around and check those out. And I'm actually going to do a soft. So it's on that soft tube. Yeah, so what you do is you feed your leader through the fly and you tie it onto that hook. And then that hook is what holds, or that rubber is what holds the hook kind of near that tube.
So when you're doing the pine cone mouse, it's just going to be hard to get down the macro, right? Like cutting and everything. Oh, no, you can cut all.
Do you want me to do that one at the end?
No, I'm just saying, if there's anything that you need to do off camera, show them like what you're doing on camera, and then go down, like, you know what I mean? Just scream it so they understand what you're doing out of view.
Cool. Yeah. No. Well. Yeah.
Just to make it simple.
Yeah. I keep forgetting that there's. It's not. I'm not just talking to these ding dongs. But yeah. No. But it'll be.
You're skinny as hell. Aren't you white feet? Isn't it white feet? You need to. You know what? Maybe kneel like boy, I'm teaching you. I'm not going to come down and fail your ass off. He didn't come back with me. We could get that whole on the side. I mean, I want to catch it, but that'd be most of them are about the other guys.
Did we fish the Arkansas at a Pueblo over Christmas?
Nice.
Not much water, but got some nice fish.
Hell yeah.
That was so weird. I'm like, I'm using no weight. It's a different type of fish you got.
Silly. That it's totally
People in every hole.
right.
Pretty stoked. I have a prototype of this.
Right.
There she is.
Did you get a commission on materials now? Signed a new contract this year?
No,
You oughta.
no, they don't give me commission.
You know, I was telling Henry that I've wanted kids for two flies. I've never caught never. Kids.
Right? Yeah, no, that's I mean, I like the little HMH one. I think that one's a freaking gem. That one's money. But the yeah, it's just like I said, it's something I wanted to show different. So the videos with the
Look at it. That all have a filing. Probably not a kid.
like 50 or something like that. I mean, not quite, but yeah. And like, and I've tied with the Stone Foe one, and I like the HMH one. HMH.
All right, if you guys want to take your seats, I think AJ's ready for the next fly.
Yeah, I want that. All right. Hey, he got no that. I should have brought my.
All right. Really, if you start talking, they'll stop.
All right, guys. This is a fly that I've been playing around with for the last summer and a few other little variations of it, but everyone's heard of mousing, mouse fishing. Super fun to do if you like fishing in the dark and doing some other things. Mouse fishing tends to be productive in those times. So if you find yourself late at night or early in the mornings, fish a mouse, it might produce for you. So not to say that they don't get eaten all day long. Like we've fooled around with some bass and even some dumb cutthroat will eat these things in the middle of the day. So I'd say mousing is more of just a dedication than it is anything. It's just like your dry or die program where if you want it to work, you got to do it. So yeah, the only way to mouse is to tie it on and to do it. So 15 minutes is not enough. You got to go 15 days probably, but when it works, it works. So this is a fun little mouse I like to tie. Little as in like it's less than 4 inches, so still big fly, but we're tying this thing on a 2-aught fulling mill streamer stripper, and we're gonna use. Well, we're live, Charlie. We told you to silence the phones earlier. So we got 210 fulling mill flat thread. We're gonna start towards the back. We're gonna leave that front part of the shank a little bare just because we're gonna tie on the foam up front, so we don't really need to gum that up with any thread yet. So for our tail, we're gonna use some ultra suede chenille or super suede chenille from Fulling Mill in a medium tan. And I like to just cut one strand off the card. It's long enough, and we'll tie that little guy in starting right at the point of the hook. And we're gonna wrap that guy back a little ways past the barb because we want this fly to really sink its ass into the water. So we'll let that thing dip down low. And then we're gonna do a few wraps of some cross-cut natural rabbit. And take this guy, and we're just gonna tie that little leather in, do a couple wraps back and forth over that, keep it nice and smooth. And then we're gonna apply some super glue, Z-mint. Oh yeah. Like I said, this isn't just like a 15-minute fly. This is a 15-day fly. You want to let these things last because you're gonna be fishing them a lot more than you're gonna be catching with them. So, you know, make sure they can withstand those whirly casts in the dark. And we're just gonna do 3 wraps of this stuff just to build a little butt end there and kind of give ourselves a prop for our legs. So we're gonna tie that off. I'm gonna trim that out of there. And get that little tag in finessed down. And so now this next step's a little tedious and a little excessive, but I like doing it. Makes me feel good. I don't know how the trout care, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these loco legs. What I like to do is I like to tie a little overhand knot about 1/2 inch away from the ends on both sides. And those are going to be our little ankles or our feet. And this step here, like I said, this is kind of unnecessary, but I like to do it. So you could tie these in just how they are. I like to kind of braid them. So what I like to do is I like to take my fingers and separate those legs. And then I'll take these strands and I'll actually just go ahead and weave those guys until it gets to the point where I can't really work or weave them anymore. And then that should give me enough room to tie them in to make a little bit more stiffer legs. Oh. And then once you get to that point, you can see how it makes a little bit more stiffer kind of guys. And then what I like to do is I will get those ankles lined up just at the back end of the hair. And then I'm going to do about 3 or 4 softer wraps. And then I'm going to kind of manipulate those legs by pressing on top to either side so you can see how now they're spread across. They're not sitting on the back. And then now I'll do a little bit tighter securing wraps over those legs going forward. And so those guys are kind of just dangling there. You can get a material clip and hold them out of the way if you want. They're short enough and the little tail doesn't really bother me. Once you get forward on there, you don't have to really worry about holding them. So trim off all that excess stuff. And then what I like to do on this next step is we're going to put in our little belly strip. So everybody's seen mice or frogs or minnows, everything, nymphs have all got a lighter belly than the tops of them. So this is kind of a, you know, that little belly patch or belly strip. So knowing that this flies, you know, I'm facing this way, I want that hair to lay back. So this is the side I want to tie in. So I'm going to fold that hair back and tie in this little tab right on the bottom of the hook shank there. And work that back to where those legs tie in at. And then throw a little material clip on there to keep that from flopping around. Next step we want to do is I want to tie in a little bit of synthetic just to help build some bulk. So I'm just using a medium crystal hackle. Lots of other materials you can use. I like this stuff just because like I said, it's short. It just helps add a little bit of bulk underneath that rabbit. So I'm not too concerned. So we're gonna go ahead and tie in that cross-cut strip again, right on top. And then we're gonna apply that crystal hackle right alongside it. Tie that all in, make it nice and clean. Then we'll work our thread forward to where we started. I'm going to go ahead and do a little hand whip finish there. So that way I can use a little more articulation with the rotary vise. So I'm going to get that materials lined up. I'm going to wrap those guys forward, folding all that synthetic back. Like I said, it's not a ton, but it's enough to keep the bulk added to it. Oh, it's way at the end. So we'll get this body built up. Tie this off here, right where we started our thread. All right, then next step, we're going to take that little belly strip. We're going to kind of fold and manipulate that hair so it kind of splits down the belly. We're going to lay that strip along there. We'll do a little tie in here, get that strip locked down. All right, so now we got kind of the back end of that guy dialed in. So now we're going to get to the foam work. So I'm going to take some fettuccine foam and flesh. I'm going to take 3 strands of it. I'm going to line up the tips. And then I'm going to take, you can get picky with whatever thread color you want. I'm just going to do whatever 140 rust. And I'm going to just take that, I'm going to pinch that tips in my hand. I'm going to pinch that thread with it. And I'm going to do 3 wraps. And then I'm going to pinch and cinch. And that's going to pull those little hands together. And then I'm going to lengthen my bobbin. I'm going to do a couple hand whip finishes. Do a 3-turn hand whip finish on that. And we're going to trim that thread off. That's going to be my little wrist for my little legs up front. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. Get that thing started. Do 3 to 4 wraps. And then we'll do a 3-turn whip finish. Get that thing dialed in. Trim off the little tags. Then at this point you can add a little bit of hard as whole, or a little zap-a-gap, whatever you want to do to keep those things from falling apart. But for right now, I'm going to do that at the end of the process. So if you're tying a bunch of these, I would say prep all of your legs and stuff first and then go back and tie them. But to help keep everything look the same, we're going to line up those little tie-in points, and we're going to trim all of those little toes to the same length. Then what I like to do is we're going to take one leg, we're going to place it on my side, and I like to have I'll do it on this side first. I like to have the little wrist or the ankle line up with the point of the hook, so that way you kind of get the same angle and flare. We'll tie that guy in on that side, then we'll take the other hand and we'll line it up on this side, tie that guy in, lock those down, and then this is I think kind of a little bit of a key step here is I like to take these loops and I like to pull them back, and I like to jam some glue right there at the head, and then we're going to pinch and press those down. We're going to lock those legs in right there, and then we're going to come in, we're going to trim that foam back, build a little ramp, and then we're going to whip finish up here at the front. We're going to swap over to some gel spun. Oh, I got some excess super glue there, so that'll stay put. Get this gel spun tied on there and get that covered. That'll lock in again.
So why gel spun?
So when we go to pull on this foam, we're going to need a lot of tensile strength, and also it's nice to have a little bit of slickness so it can slide through, but you also want super thick thread so that way you don't slice through this foam. So now we're going to kind of do a little bit of a different process. I'm going to swap over and we're going to start cutting and building some foam, some head foam stuff. So I'm going to take some more of this fettuccine foam. I'm going to take, I think it's three strands of tan. I think it's 4 strands of root beer. And we'll do 4 strands of gray. And I've got a little prepping tube here, so kind of a hair stacker, but not quite. So I'm going to fold these guys in half. I'm going to trim them, and then I'm going to guess about half. I'm going to trim it, and I'm going to throw that in the little stacker or holder. Same thing with the tan. I'm going to fold that guy in half. Trim it in half. Throw that in with the gray. And then the root beer is kind of a goofy length on this one, so I think I'm going to try and just cut it in thirds. And that should be about close to that same length as those other pieces. And get that mixed in there with that foam. And so now you got kind of a little blend of foam here. I kind of like to just stack them and just kind of mix them up. And then you can, once you get them blended, then you can kind of just align them in your hand a little bit. And then you can throw them back in the little tube. And then if you got any that are laying sideways, it's pretty easy to just pick 1 or 2 of them out and get them laid back in there nice and straight. And so once we get those colored ones mixed in there, then I'm going to take some white foam, some white fettuccine. I'm going to do 4 strands of white. I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to fold in half and then cut it in half. And this time I'm going to I'm going to try and get those little foams dialed so I can have them on the bottom half, and I'm going to slide that white in on top. And so that way I can have that white belly match that same throughout the head all the way through the body. So I'm going to set that aside. What I like to do is I like to rotate my vise 90 degrees so you can see how my thread is hanging parallel with the hook eye. And what that does is that helps me when I go to slide this foam on, that I'm going to slide the foam. Instead of sliding it on this, I'm going to slide it this direction, and that thread's going to split right through that color change. So that way I don't have to try and wrap or manipulate it. It's going to keep that white right on the bottom facing me. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those guys on there. So I'm going to kind of manipulate that to where that white is on the bottom. I'm going to really pinch this down. I'm going to do 2 wraps, and I'm going to slowly pull and pinch, and I'm going to really keep this, thread manipulated. I want to make sure that I'm not adding too many wraps, but I'm also adding enough wraps. So now I'm going to do 2 more wraps while I pinch and cinch that stuff down. And like I said, this entire time I'm just continually to press all the way around that foam just to really get that thread to lock in and hold tight. And then once you get those first 2 done, then I'm going to start just kind of zigzagging my thread and kind of just manipulating some of these foam chunks back. And once I do 1 full revolution, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pinch and cinch and really focus on getting that 1 wrap all the way into that foam. Lock that in. And then each time you do this, you're going to zigzag and you're going to work yourself closer and closer to that hook eye. And just tying down just a few tags at a time here at the end. 1 full revolution, pinch and cinch. And then once you get to the end here, you're going to fold all those tabs back, and you're going to do a couple of tight wraps there on the eye. And then I like to do the hand whip finish. Get all of that material out of the way. Do that one more time. Don't look, you might turn to stone, Hal. Get that foam nice and manipulated where you want it. Kind of loosen it up a little bit. And then you thought the dirty bird was a mess. Watch this. So what I like to do is I like to take that hook, and I'm going to undo it, and I'm going to look directly at that hook so I can see right where I'm trimming. And I'm going to trim as flat as possible on these first few cuts. That way I give myself a good baseline on where I'm going to be able to start my taper from there. So you can see I got a nice flat bottom to it now. I'm going to throw that guy back in the vise. And then what I like to do is I like to kind of set an angle along the hook eye, and I'm just going to rotate my vise as I make little trims. Might not be the cleanest or the happiest after tying this because you got to vacuum up all the little chunks, but I say little bites go a long ways. When you take some big bites out of this stuff, you kind of regret, and you get those tummy ache feelings of, oh, I shouldn't have done that. So just little bites with your scissors help. And then again, we're just gonna just set an angle and then just rotate that vise. And if you get some that starts slipping out of the scissors, you can kind of grab the tags and kind of force them to get the trim. As you can see too, I mean, it's not a lot of stuff there on the front end. You can trim it down quite a ways, but I mean, that's quite a bit of hook gap. You're still gonna, you know, fish decides to put his mouth over that, you'll find home more times than not. But mousing is still a game of wonders of what just happened. Why did it happen? Why did it do that? What's going on there? So this guy right here, super fun. You can definitely fish it as is. Trim off these little tabs on the back here, make those feet look pretty. A little pedicure. You can fish it as is. Definitely does its thing, but when you've got plenty of time on your hands, you like to kind of mess around and add stuff that's unnecessary. So I'm going to put some ears and some eyes on this as well. So I'm going to do the same kind of process. I'm just going to fold this fettuccine foam over, and I'm going to tie in the same little loop style. Do a few wraps and then a few whip finishes. Trim that, take that thread off. Do this for some ears, and then the eyes are pretty fun too. They're just going to be some mono crab eyes that you just slide in. But like I said, all this extra stuff right here is just for fun. I'd say the ears are kind of nice. You can see which direction your fly is actually floating. But again, when you've got that white belly on there, you can tell pretty easy if it's floating the wrong way. So I'm going to trim off these little tabs, make them as small as you can. And then what I also like to do here is I like to take something and kind of make a split in the head here, so that way I kind of get a general line of where I want these ears to sit. And then I'll take a little glue, put some on the ears, and then put a little dab where I want them to stay home, and get those guys pressed in there. Do that again on this side. You can see cute little ears on top. And then for the eyes, I got some mono crab eyes here. Pretty easy to put these guys into. And then one thing I've noticed with this foam is after you kind of manipulate it a little bit, it will like to expand and kind of change its shape. So you will trim it back a few other times as you get going. But I like to take the eyes and kind of seesaw them into position. Take those guys, slide them in. Once you kind of get them to where you like where they're sitting, you just slide them up, apply a little bit of glue, slide them back down. Once you get those, let them kind of set in there, kind of squish that foam around there and get that mono to adhere to something.
And there's your weed guard right there.
Yeah, weed guard, little whiskers. But definitely take those little jobbers and trim them out of there, because again, you're mousing. The more you have impeding your hookup, the less likely you are to hook up. So more hook gap, say more likely to get fish to eat. So That's the pine cone mouse. One of my go-tos. Like I said, it's super fun. The way that pine cone sets up and stuff is it throws like this huge bubble line kind of wake behind it when you strip them aggressively. I've tied this same head style with that fettuccine foam, but with like a deceiver back end with some saddles and then a few whatever flashy stuffs in between, and Basco nuts for those things in the summer. And like I said, it just leaves this just very, very wounded bubble trail looking thing when that thing gurgles and pops, and there's just popping bubbles for like 5 feet behind it. And those warm water fish like that greasy stuff. So all right, I'm gonna swap over. I'm gonna tie some other stuff here, so I'm clean up my mess a little bit and be back at it in about 5 minutes or less. So give me a second. Oh, here, yeah.
Do somehow. That's what I was thinking. What's that? Try some of those. They'll look like they've been eaten.
I just saw
That thing's been to Mongolia with Jimmy and Millie. They caught Linnick and whatever, some other grayling on that.
Did you see the YouTube video that Lance put out when catching pike in that pond or lake?
I did not watch it yet, but
Man, that was wild.
all right. So this fly is is a everyone's heard of the tarpon toad. I've been doing lots of carp fishing, and I've decided to take that tarpon toad and shrink it down to a little size 6 carpon toad. So pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's everyone's seen the tarpon toad, but I'm just going to tie a little mini version that I've been using and working well on carp. So we've got in the vise a mustad curved streamer. It's got the Teflon coated, so super sticky, really good hook. I like to start by roughing this one up. So we're gonna throw some lead or some tungsten eyes on there. So I want to give it a good base to start with. We're gonna start with some 140 purple thread from Fulling Mill. I'm just using some tungsten eyes. These are the Black Nickel Galaxy. They just got a cool purple and black and red kind of look to them, so matches the colors of this little bug. We'll lay down a little layer of some super glues. We'll work that thread back towards the eye here, and I want this dumbbell eye to be right up against the eye of the hook. So we're gonna slide that guy in there real tight. We're gonna do some X wraps and get that secured in place. And then we're gonna do some halo wraps. We're gonna wrap that thing around. Oh. Bust my thread. It says 140. But hey, good thing it's the start, not the finish, right? Get that thing going again. Get all that thread. Oh, it's a ruby tip. Get those eyes locked in. And then we're going to work that thread back to the point of the hook there. We're going to tie in our tail. I'm going to use some micros or squirrel. There's some standard squirrel zonker here. We're going to peel off some of that fuzz so we can get a nice little leather strip. We're going to lay that leather strip down with the little fuzz going up or going down, so that way when this fishes or you're out there on the water, it's going to ride hook point up. That way you can feed these little greasy sea sucks on the bottom and not lose as many flies. And so we'll trim that guy, just a little bit past about twice the length of the shank there. You want a nice little fluttery tail, something you can see as it drops. And then we're gonna throw in a little bit of rubber legs. I'm gonna do some micro flex floss in purple. Get one strand of this. I'm going to fold this over twice. The first time, we'll fold it over a second time. And we're going to tie this in on the bottom here. And I'm going to fold that over. Give ourselves some fun little legs to flutter around as that thing drops. And then we're going to use we're going to take that same pine squirrel. I want to tie this guy in right at the base of those rubber legs. Then we're going to do three wraps of this pine squirrel and give it kind of nice big bushy collar. tie that guy off. Then we're gonna kind of manipulate that hair by wrapping over it again. Make a few wraps, covering that up, kind of help push that stuff back. And then we've got some salty brush, just a little 3/4 of an inch brush from Fulling Mill in the black and purple, or the black blitz is what they call it. So we're going to tie this guy in right at that squirrel. Break off that excess wire. Takes a little extra time with the stainless steel stuff. And then we're going to hang our thread in our cradle. And then we're going to do some rotary wraps going forward. So I like to preen the material back, make a wrap, rotate the vise, preen the material, and that makes for a really nice dense body without trapping too many fibers and without rotating the wire or the brush, so everything lays nice and clean. Get that worked up to right behind those eyes. I'm going to tie this one off right below the dumbbells, so that way that little tie-in point will be a little bit more protected. And then same thing, I like to do the helicopter twist technique to get that wire to pop loose. Do a few more covering wraps. Get that thread in front of the dumbbells, and we'll finish tying the fly here, and then the rest of this is going to be trimming and gluing. So get that whip finish done. Get that thread off of there. So now we're going to take a brush, kind of loosen up all those fibers, straighten them out, get everything nice and bushy looking. And then we're going to take that stuff and we're going to spread it across the bottom so you get nice flat looking profile on the bottom there. And we're going to take a little bit of the Solarez in medium. Put a healthy bead along the bottom there. And then what I like to do to help that stuff kind of lock in is I'll kind of push those fibers up, and then I'll stroke them down, and then I'll kind of push them up, and then I'll stroke them down. And what that does is that allows that UV resin to kind of work its way into there. And then as it lays nice and flat, we'll hit it with the light so we can make sure we get that nice clean bottom on there. And once that's got a nice cure to it, we're going to go ahead and flip that over. We're going to, you know, multiple ways to skin the cat, but this is kind of how I like to do my little tarpon or carp and toads. I don't necessarily like to split and resin the top just because I don't have to, because I use the brush. What I like to do is I like to pinch, and I'll use the edge of my finger kind of as my taper. And so I'm going to go from the hook eye, and I'm going to kind of trim back to where I go just under that hook point. And so that gives you kind of a little little bit of a kind of a domey look to that bug. And if you wanted to, you could throw a little bone dry along the bottom there, help clean up, make that belly look nice and glossy. And then put a little bit of that bone dry right on the eyes. That way it makes those heads nice and durable. And let that thing cure for a good second. Rotate that guy. But black and purple seems to work really well for me. Orange or kind of a rust is another one I like to use. I'd say the best carp flies are the flies that I can see in the water, because then I know where they're at. If the fish don't like them, that's their problem. But as long as I know if that fly is within a foot, if I can see the reaction or I can tell where my fly is, the more likely you are to be able to, make the right decision and right moves. But so yeah, that's where I kind of like to contrast. Black is a good one. Orange, I like that a lot because most of your carp backgrounds are going to be green. And so the opposite of the color wheel is going to be an orange or a red. And so I can see that really well. Same thing with, if you want to fish a bright white, you can, or like a tan, because it's something you can see. I'd say give it a try. So give this guy one last little comb through and see if there's any other little fibers that I want to knock loose or get any of those haters out of there. But if you guys got any questions or anything, feel free to shout them out. Pass this guy around and get set up for the little jiggy mysis shrimp next. So good hands, feet.
That's a mouthful.
All right, you just get swapped out here real quick on materials again. We got one more bug left in the box. And so once I get done with that one, if you guys want to see any bugs tied again or whatever, I can stick around and do that.
What's up, Fumbles?
Help your mouth, Charlie, will you?
All right, so this next bug is really directed towards fishing below Palisades Reservoir. One of the few spots where we get to fish with mysis shrimp. So having that around is something that you can go do, make a full day of it, make an evening of it. But fishing with mysis can be a fun and productive way to catch some of those silly trout. And so we're gonna get started with one of those jig force shorts in a size, I think this is a 16. Then I've got a 2.8 offset bead on there. I'm sure I fished them with the metallic pinks. I've fished them with silver, white. I'd say you can kind of yeah. I'd say I like white just because it's like I said, the whole fly, I like to tie this one in all white, and so that one's kind of my go-to. But like I said, I've fished them with pink beads, I've fished them with silver beads, and I don't really think your bead is gonna make much of a difference, but I just like the way this guy looks with the white one. So And get set up here.
No, that's big for a mysis shrimp. How big is mysis right over down there?
I would say they probably are about like a size, like full body length in that. I'd say they can get up to a half inch. So yeah, um like typically they get tied with like extended bodies and stuff like that. But I would say like on average like a 18 is kind of what mostly will see people tied. The,
That's a 14.
that one's a 16. Yeah, but it's a 2x wide. So in that world of hook gap, I mean it's a fairly large hook. I'd say luckily with the fishery we have here, it's pretty. We've got pretty easy fish to catch on the South Fork, and a lot of times too, like if you're doing the like spring flush in that where they're really pumping water out of the reservoir and the myces are really getting sucked out of there, um, you can fish more attractor pattern style where it's not as you at that point you probably are better off fishing blobs and eggs and flesh flies and stuff like that. But as the water kind of clears up in that, this is I'd say more of the smaller the feast that they kind of put on. And then if you really want to go to the midges and that, I mean, if those fish are at the dam, they're not eating midges. There's way better food sources than that up there. So all right, I'm gonna get started here with some 70 denier thread. Get that guy started there right behind the bead. I'm gonna push that bead forward and pack some of that thread in there so that way it doesn't slip and slide on us. And then first material, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make some eyes. And so I like to take a little chunk of 15-pound Maxima. And what I like to do is I like to put them in a little clamp or tweezers of some sort with about the same amount of mono on each side. Just kind of melt those back. Get it a little bit tighter. And so just past the width of that bead is a good distance on these eyes. Let those guys kind of cool down. And then I think in the video I might have Sharpied the eyes and covered them. You can do the same thing. There's no right or wrong answer on that. One thing that I have done is once you hit these this Maxima Chameleon with the UV light, it pretty much glows green. And so I've kind of just been leaving them blank and just letting them glow bright with the rest of the stuff. So like when that stuff hits the UV, it's super bright. So I haven't even been sharpening them lately. But once you get those eyes lashed down, we're going to move our thread back a little ways and we're going to put our tail fibers in there. You can use synthetic little fibettes, or you can use some CDL. I like using some CDL. I've got a pretty good source of white feathers. So, I mean, this lasts you a whole lifetime of mysis shrimp there on that little guy. So that's going to be my go-to for the tails. I'm going to do about 4 or 5 little strands there. We'll measure them to be about the same length of the shank. Tie those guys in. Trim off that butt ends. So you can also do some different stuff here. You can add some flash, some dubbing, whatever you want to, some mylar if you wanted to have a little bit more glitter and glam to it. But I like just kind of keeping it plain and simple, just nice and white. Work that thread up, build a little bit of a taper to it. And then once we get that guy up to the eyes, we're going to take a little bit of the little bit of some berry ice dub or tactical micro tactical flash from Fulling Mill. We're going to take just a little speck of it, dub that on there, do a few X wraps,
Used in the 80s.
do a few little X wraps over those eyes. There we got just a little hot spot there, and then we're gonna do some CDC prepping and take one of these little white CDC feathers. Throw that guy in the little feather prepper. Pick it up with our little Swiss clamp. And trim that stem off of there. And then we'll get our fancy thread splitter out. Split this thread. That thread split there, so build a little collar. Get that material clip in there. Let's move that stuff up just a little ways. Get that little black fiber out of there. Twist that thread up. Get it to lock in those little fibers. Get that guy whip finished up here. Do a little head cement if you need to, but again, you can go bang them up at the dam pretty good with these guys. Some of my favorite days of fishing, doing dam laps. So definitely check it out. Tie up your mysis for when you come up here and do the South Fork stuff. You can't hate on it.
Do you jig that at all, or just let it dead?
I mean, you can jig it for what you want, but I'd say if you only have so much access from wade fishing and that kind of stuff up there in the winter time. But once you get into the summer months and that, you're just following bobbers with that. You're not tight line to them or anything from the boat. You're doing dam laps. So yeah, no, you're running 8 feet deep. I'd say 6 to 8 feet deep is going to be your average, but that's why you run them with the tungsten stuff, and you can vary the sizes on the different flows and that you need. But yeah, you got to get them down at the dam. So yeah, that's all the flies I brought to tie. So if you guys need to see any repeats, we can do that. But I appreciate you guys swinging by to kick off the demo season. So what's up, Rob? Doing well. Oh, we got fly raffle.
The last fly was an enigma, though. You got CDC, make flies float, they put on a bead.
Here, this is the floater.
Biddy and I have, struggled for years to stop the thread from splitting. And now you have to buy a $30 tool to split thread.
All right, who's got the ticket ending in 662?
Of course, better not. 662. Better not.
We got him. Rory.
It's been a losing season. Where'd this come from?
That's Rory's.
Yeah, it is. That's what I wanted.